Arobinagu is the force behind the most powerful shrine in Igbo land. Arobinagu is also one of the most misunderstood concepts outside of those who have a firm grasp of the Odinani tradition. In fact, failing to understand Arobinagu and the work of Arobinagu is today the #1 threat to Odinani as a body of knowledge. There's so much confusion around Arobinagu and its symbols and what it does that, believe it or not, Arobinagu is one of the reasons Europeans came to Igbo land and said that Igbo people were Hebrews. Now, all of this confusion aside, Arobinagu is also the reason that this tradition will never disappear from the face of the earth. This video is going to clear a lot of the confusion about Odinani that some of you may have, and give you a real simple way to understand everything that I'm talking about, and hopefully help you realize that it's actually not complex at all, but very, unbelievably simple to understand. Now, in order to do that, we're gonna have to let go of something. Listen close. The primary idea that you should at least pause or let go of is the idea that Odinani is a belief system, most similar to a religion, or a body of beliefs that our ancestors held and came up with and that kind of thing. Because that's not completely the full story. Now, in order for everything to finally click, and for you to see how simple all of this is to understand, at least suspend that thought until this video is over. But if you continue believing that, and that belief continues to be common, we are in deep and serious trouble. And to make this very clear, I'm going to tell you a story from the 1970s called the 100th Monkey Effect, where Western scientists came face to face with Arobinagu, and till this day have no clue what they witnessed. For 30 years, a group of scientists were researching a group of Japanese monkeys on the Japanese island of Kojima. These monkeys were provided with sweet potatoes, which they ended up liking a lot and looked forward to receiving. But there was a problem. Scientists would give the monkeys the sweet potatoes by dropping them in the sand, which the monkeys didn't like very much and didn't look forward to chewing on. And then, faced with these sandy potatoes, something incredible happened. Now, pay attention to this part. The monkeys solved the problem of the sandy potatoes one day. This was when an 18-month-old monkey, which they had named Emo, got an idea. She grabbed one of the potatoes and took it to the water to wash the sand off. This is a behavior that had not been observed before, and this experiment was conducted over a period of 30 years. Soon after she did it, another monkey began to copy her by washing the potatoes, and over time, the practice of washing the sand off your potatoes became very common. Emo had also figured out how to get sand off of because they were being given wheat as well. And Emo, being a genius, would pick up the wheat and throw it in the water and watch the water separate the sand from the wheat and then pick the wheat back up and eat the clean new wheat. Now, this practice spread from one monkey to another until the washing of food became common knowledge for the group of monkeys. But what happened next has left Western observers in debate for decades, and because it seriously challenges and completely changes how we are told that information and learning works. Around the time 100 monkeys were washing their potatoes, the scientists were stunned, because across the ocean, many miles away on another island, completely secluded from the original group of monkeys, another group of monkeys started washing their potatoes as well, almost as if the knowledge had reached 100 monkeys on the original island, hopped over the ocean, and continued spreading amongst a new group. Now, the eerie part of the whole thing was the monkeys on the second island did not have any contact, communication, or insight on what was happening across the water. And it didn't stop there. The behavior was observed in around 5 colonies and different islands around the area, including the Japanese mainland. And while the rest of the world debated what had just happened, this is what our ancestors have to say about this phenomenon and how it ties back to the presence of Arobinagu. This is Derek Ofadarmo with TheMedicineShell, and today I'm going to explain Arobinagu, the Abara most often associated with plants, forests, trees, medicine, divination, and science. I'm going to explain to you who Arobinagu is and what it does, and why Arobinagu is the power behind the most powerful dibias in Igbo land. And by the end of this video, I'm going to give you a tool that's going to help you understand Odinani or make it a lot easier to piece together, because it's very simple. If you're new to this channel, I teach Igbo spirituality, and if this is a topic that you're interested in, hit subscribe. Now, the best way to support the channel is by joining our Patreon community at patreon.com/TheMedicineShell. Patrons get access to my full research library, which has several books, articles, and first-hand accounts on Igbo spirituality. Patrons also have access to the ancestral calendar, which links to your Google Calendar, and it shows you the 4-day week and 13-moon calendar of our ancestors, and what observances was held on different moons and so forth. As I'm recording this right now, we are looking at Onwa-Agun, a moon of spiritual cleansing and atonement for any wrongdoing in the previous year. And if you want to know how to celebrate that or how to go along with that, it's all there on the calendar. Patrons also have access to exclusive videos and our Odinani group chat where we get together and discuss different topics from the ancestral view. Now, if you're interested in learning the Igbo language this year, I've opened an Igbo language school at www.kedu.me. Kedu.me is the most effective Igbo language learning program in the world. And it works because we follow our ancestral method and we learn the Igbo language as our ancestors understand it, rather than a lot of these other schools that, that just kind of mimic an English language learning program because it doesn't translate well. Now, the reason I say it's the most effective language program in the world is because we have had several students that have never heard a word of Igbo, but within 3 months, they are speaking it and speaking it confidently. They can hold conversations and everything, and that's 3 months. So if you have told yourself you are going to learn the Igbo language, sign up for our upcoming session at www.kedu.me. And with that being said, let's begin. The creator is not a single being, but rather a couple, a mother who is listed first and a father who is listed second. This conception of the creator is a creator which repeats itself throughout creation again and again, meaning that all of creation is a mirror of this duality, Eke na Chi. And as one can receive from Chi, the father creator, an individual can also receive from Eke, the mother creator. Eke na Chi guide everything. And because all things exist to repeat this pattern, even the messenger of its guidance is a two-headed double-gender figure known as Agun, a combination of Neagun, the mother, and Okagun, the father. When the father sends a message to you, this comes in the form of Ose. Ose is also referred to as Uche and Abia, though all three names describe different attributes of the same or a similar phenomena. At all times, the masculine polarity of creation, or Chi, is sending waves or tides of its own consciousness in nature, known as Ose, the way your mind sends messages to different parts of your body. Ose is therefore a parcel of wisdom, which leads its receiver to do one thing or another, to see or understand something by way of divine inspiration. This instruction is known as Ndo. Now, those of you who speak Igbo are familiar with the word Ndo as meaning life, and you're not wrong. But one thing we always talk about in Kedu is the fact that the Igbo language does as much as possible with a single word, whereas English kind of has a philosophy of having as many words as possible for a single thing. Ndo comes to mean life because something is alive, or Nye Dindu is something that is physical, being led or animated by a consciousness. As a side note, the Oji or the Oji breaking ceremony is a simulation of the process of human beings receiving from Obi Chukwu. And if you pay attention to some of the shapes I'm going to describe in this video, you'll see what each of the Oji pieces are supposed to represent. But because it simulates the process of Chukwu giving on to human beings or giving to our ancestors, Onye butara Oji butara Ndo. Person who brings Oji has brought Ndo, or life. Ose is this guiding consciousness, or rather, Ose is consciousness itself. Consciousness leads and controls the physical. The masculine polarity of creation, known as Chi, is also known as Osebluwa, the Ose, or tide, or wave, or energy, or even consciousness that carries all things. So when a person says Chukwu or Osebluwa, it is best to remember they are referring to the energy, cause, wave, and reason that creation exists and is animated. This energy pulses through all things, giving them Ndu. Now, earlier, I said that the formula, Eke na Chi, creates all things by repeating its duality, in essence being the formula or the algorithm by which all of creation is put together. Now, one of these repetitions is Alanigwe, earth and sky. And in this manifestation, the masculine polarity is Igwe, the sky. This means that if you understand the sky, you will understand the chi. If you understand the chi, you will understand the sky, because they are a repetition of the same nature on a different scale. With Osebluwa being one of the names of this masculine polarity, and with it having the nature of pulsing Ose, or its own essence, into all things, giving them ndu, life. On the scale of nature, the Osebluwa of nature is Igwe, the sky, which casts its essence onto us and the planets, as well as the galaxy as a whole. This essence is the sun, or Anyanwu, the undying eye. Anyanwu casts sun rays, which are fundamentally the same nature of the sun, onto all things in its sphere. Like Osebluwa, the sun carries the galaxy, literally the Osebluwa, the energy which carries the universe. And its energy animates all things, from planets to plants. So if the chi gives Ose, and the sun gives sunlight, and if you understand how sunlight works, you will understand how Ose, or consciousness, works. Now, if you specifically want me to make a video on either Anyanwu or Osebluwa, go ahead and comment below and I'll go into details in a separate video on those topics. Another duality is Madu, now Mo. Now previously I've translated Madu as person, and in casual Igbo this is correct. And Mo translates as spirit, which again is correct. But if we go further into the word, we'll know that Madu is Ma, or spiritual matter, that is being led by a consciousness, or Ndu. Therefore, Madu is a sentient being. Because Madu comes first into duality, it is like the mother, or Eke, and Mo, which is spirit, or aura, is like the father in the Eke na Chi relationship. Few people know this, but Mo is also a synonym for Chukwu. So there are communities where you will hear Chukwu specifically referred to as Mo. So at this point, I'm hoping you can see a pattern where there's a repetition of an essence at both sides, the Eke and the Chi. On the Chi side, everything I've described as matching the Chi nature, such as sunlight, sky, and spirit, have specific through lines of truth in common. For one, they're all intangibles, and they lend themselves to not having a set physical form and conceptual. But when applied to physical existence, they give energy, leadership, animation, and life. And with Igbo language, you can say all of this with Ndu, or the other forms of Du, such as my own name, Duru, which is a leader or a guide. One of these gifts is Uche, or wisdom, that enter a human being from beyond. Abia is wisdom that is cast from one source into another, often without terrestrial efforts. It is a way of describing a nature of wisdom by which wisdom itself has the capacity to move independent of its holder, similar to light, which is described in the Ilu, Uche na Abia Abia, wisdom comes and goes. Now, we as human beings can feel and see this entire phenomena happening because, again, what is happening on the cosmic scale, according to our ancestors, is happening on the terrestrial scale. An example of this is having the thought to snap your finger and then lifting your hands and snapping your fingers. The brain sends a pulse of light to the tendons and muscles necessary to make that action happen. And following the instruction of this Ose, the physical form is led into action. Now, the instruction itself does not have a physical form. You cannot put the thought in a bottle or a cup. And its essential nature is to lead the physical into action. And when the physical goes into action, that thought is manifest into a physical form. But here's the part that blew my mind, because I think about this a lot. And it might be interesting for you as well. While the mind can give a command to your finger to snap, there are very few bodily functions that are controlled by the human mind or your consciousness. You can't tell your bones what minerals to be made of. You can't tell your heart to grow a little bigger. Your cells live and act and die without your consent. And almost none of your organs are under the direct command of your consciousness. You don't have a conscious control of your heartbeat, your liver, your digestion process, your pancreas, and so forth. So this would imply that consciousness is not your body's only master. That some functions answer to a different set of ose, or commands, that don't come from the mind or from you as a concept. In fact, we can take it further and even say that your mind really doesn't have control of your mind. You can suggest things for you to think about, and you can suggest ways for you to feel. But oftentimes it's a tug of war between the suggestion and what the mind wants to do. Now, before I begin to say how this all ties back to Arobinagu, there are a few things, like really interesting things I want you to know about Ose that'll help it all come together. Number one, our ancestors did not just see light as a visual phenomena. Light is a consciousness unto itself that is capable of conducting and carrying thoughts, as it is what thought is made of. And the second thing is, the conscious part of light reaches us by landing in a part of our essence known as the Nkatabia. The conscious portion of light reaches us by landing in a part of our essence known as the Nkatabia, or the Abiankata, the basket of wisdom. Now, sometimes this is described as a basket. Oftentimes it is described as a bag, or the abauche. Now, John Ume is a very famous Nze in Dibia, and author of the book After God is Dibia. In this book, he describes the Abiankata as a pyramid of salt with many eyes, and itself is an open container for catching Ose from Obi-Chukwu. And this is actually where I get the name of the channel, TheMedicineShell. Because when you're doing divination, the Nkatabia manifests as a tortoise shell, and the afa that is done from out of a tortoise shell is said to be the most effective in decoding mystery. All right, back to Arobinagu. So earlier, I said that all things are remanifestations of an original concept, Eke na Chi. The original concept creates what I personally describe as Ububewa, the ladder of the universe. At the very top, you have Eke na Chi, and then moving down, not necessarily in this order, you'll have Alanigwe, Madonna Mo, Oboniche, Munyenadi, all things being able to fit into a duality. And this use of duality to describe things is a common feature in the Igbo language. So those of you who speak Igbo, you're probably familiar with a lot of these that you've been using casually and didn't know that had some cosmological significance. Meaning that what is done on the Chi side is done on the Eke side. But everything on the Chi side is going to reflect the nature of the Chi, and everything on the Eke side is going to reflect the nature of Eke. So, if the masculine sends messages or instructions or parcels of its own essence that we refer to as Ose, and it pulses this energy throughout the universe, giving Ndu, the feminine does the same. Otu Chi na-eme, Eke na-eme. What the Chi does, Eke does. But the way the feminine will do it will be different and reflect her nature. The feminine sends its essence by way of parcels known as Aro. Aro are impulses or messages from creation which guide the building and sustenance of creation itself. Aro pulses from the earth, or Anna, into all things, filling all things with her essence, her gifts, powers, and ability, ensuring that all things are imbued with a unique and divine power. Aro is therefore the parcel of the Divine Mother's essence, power, and messaging that is embedded in the trees, the roots, the plants, animals, and people, and flows from her to us, the way blood flows from the heart to the appendages of the body. Aro is that second master that I spoke of earlier, the consciousness of nature itself, which guides and controls the natural functions of the universe, the earth, the environment, and living things. As Osebuluwa is a means of describing the collective consciousness of Chukwu, its energy-carrying essence that is aware and alive, filling the universe with its awareness. Eke has a name for the living accumulation of her embodiment of the collective nature consciousness. Because it is nature consciousness that human beings rely on to advance, to survive, to heal and sustain and grow, Arobinagu shrines are considered the most powerful in modern Odinani Igbo. Arobinagu is also known as Dadan, the dreadlocks of the earth, representing the flora and fauna, which are extensions sprouting from the surface or scalp of the earth into all directions, while still carrying Aro or earth consciousness within them. Arobinagu is most popularly known as Neagu. Now, Agu is the Abara of wisdom, collective consciousness of Chineke or Ekenachi, the Abara that represents the wisdom of the universe and its creator. Agu itself is a Siamese or two-faced, two-gendered spirit, one half feminine, one half masculine. And for the normal person, these portions, the male and female, face away from from each other. Nagu is the half of Agu that is feminine. She is the healer, and she is the one linked to the consciousness of the living world. It is through Nagu that an individual accumulates Ako in the duality Ako and Uche. And as we already understand that Uche is divine wisdom, Ako is divine intellect, an intellect that is one with Eke and Ana, or all of creation. Nagu, or Arobinagu, is the spirit which guides and initiates Dibyas. Arobinagu appears in dreams as an elder woman who seeks to teach you something if you have the chi of a Dibya or a healer. Arobinagu also appears in dreams as a tall masquerade, and in both incarnations, she possesses the desire to teach you or to get you to accept an incoming set of lessons. When a new Dibya is initiated, there's often a ceremony requiring extended isolation in a forest or a dark room within a forest. The instruction can be two things. The individual being initiated as a Dibya can be instructed not to leave the forest until the Mo or spirit of that forest begins to speak to them. The Arobinagu, or the Aro which lives within the Agu of the forest. Or this person should not leave the forest or isolation until they learn to make Nagu or Arobinagu and Okeagu speak to each other. Now remember that last part, the speaking to each other part, because I'll explain what that looks like shortly. One of the reasons that Europeans landed in Igbo land and assumed that they were in the presence of Hebrews. Arobinagu's day is Nkwo in the 4-day calendar system. Eke, Orie, Afo, and Nkwo, with Nkwo representing wind, vapor, and air. Arobinagu is the consciousness that carries Ako, or natural intellect, from one place to another, with or without human intervention. It's important to note that all Dibyas are manifestations of Agu, the Abara of universal wisdom. But among these Dibyas, there is an even smaller, more select category known as Arobinagu Dibya. In the very distant past, it was only Arobinagu Dibyas who performed Afa, or divination, by way of Afa Babala. Afa is a binary code developed by Igbo ancestors to tap into the mind of Arobinagu. This allows Arobinagu to be an advisor, a guide, and a revealer of mystery for individuals who have questions. Afa is able to do this and communicates by use of a binary system, which leads us to another duality. Aku, the black node, and Obi, the light node, and combining these in an infinite array of patterns to reveal a consciousness. Now, if you're interested in a video on Afa divination, comment below. Arobinagu also goes by the name of Ogun. Ogun, in casual Igbo, gets translated as medicine. But to quote Dibia John, medicine is to Ogun what a drop of water is to an ocean. Ogun is the application of natural consciousness. It is being aware of the laws and configuration of the universe and applying them deliberately in one direction or another to achieve an aim. Like all things in the ancestral view, Ogun has a hand in the spiritual and a hand in the physical, and gives human beings the privilege of mastering and amending their reality. One can apply Ogun to heal, as well as to destroy, as is said in the Ilu, Nyene ezo ezo, nebu ebu, what heals kills. Now, I can do a separate video on Ogun, Igbo medicine, and science, and our ancestral approach to things like mental health, medicine, healing, and so forth, as well as what they're now referring to as Juju. So if you're interested, comment below. Another name for Arobinagu is Aguahia, Agu of the forest. When a community settles into a land, in order to live in harmony with the land itself, specialists will establish communication with the spirits of that land. These spirits or frequencies themselves will tell a people how to live on that land in order for harmony to be sustained between the land and the people. One of the spirits that all communities make contact with is Aguahia, the consciousness of the forest surrounding them. This allows the community access to Afifia Namborog, foliage and roots. As Arobinagu is the keeper of Afifia Namborog, all lands have their native ailments, and an equal portion Arobinagu will provide an answer to that ailment in the same land that the ailment came from, meaning that all lands are balanced, and this balance is navigated and unlocked by way of knowledge. Arobinagu is the source of scientific, medical, and technological understanding. It is the source of the best methods of coexistence with the environment and community which form a symbiotic set of rules and guidelines by which the people and the land coexist, known as omenala, or culture, as it is done on the land. Now, it's important to note that there is odinala and omenala, and they are separate and the same. Odinala is the observation of things as they are on the land, or odinala, as it is on the land. Omenala is what you do on the land in response to this observation. So odinala is, what are the facts? And omenala says, since the facts are XYZ, we are going to behave in this manner. Also, if you want a video on ancestral root and foliage or leaf medicine, known to our people as Afifia Namborog, go ahead and comment below. And extra points to anybody who can spell it. Even without human contact, the Arobinagu, the land, or a community is still in action and existing. But often when a people fail to make contact with Arobinagu, this can be a detrimental thing or a source of detriment for the community, as no accord of peace has been made between plant and human life. Arobinagu is the force behind disease, plagues, and several possessive or punitive spirits that can work against the progress of a community. For this reason, establishing an understanding and an accord and living by it is the core of omenala. Now, earlier I said that the chi consciousness, or ose, was collected into a basket known as nkatabia. I also described this as a cone or a pyramid-shaped object, or manifest in nature as a bird's nest, the basin of the human skull, or an upwards-facing tortoiseshell. Earth consciousness is channeled in a similar way, but rather than the open portion, or the widest portion of all of these shapes, the cone, the pyramid, the basket, the shell, facing upwards, they are inversed to face downwards, as it is consciousness coming from the bottom up rather than from the top down that it is collecting. This ground-bound pyramid or mound structure is the engine behind the most powerful shrines in Igbo land. And this formation is known as Akwali Omumu or Oda Omumu. Akwali Omumu is an Arushi channeling device for the energies that come from the divine feminine, one of which is Arobinagu. Now, there's a debate in certain circles as to whether Akwali Omumu and Arobinagu are the same thing or they mean the same thing. So I wanted to clarify something. Akwali Omumu is a gateway or a door by which Arobinagu enters and exits a community. The mix-up is justified because oftentimes the Arushi, or the gateway or channeling device, and the force or spirit it channels have the same name. But Akwali Omumu is not always there to channel Arobinagu, but rather to tap into the source by which Arobinagu comes, which is the feminine element of the earth, Anna. And if you go back further, Eke. I have a video called Omumu Explained, and I have the link below if you're interested. One of the last great Akwali Omumu channeling centers are what we today refer to as the Nsude pyramids. Now, in the community of Nsude, it was noted by arriving Europeans that there were several pyramids set up in this area, made of reinforced earth, and in this particular area, about twice the height of an adult human being. These pyramids were lined up in rows of twos and followed a step pattern. When the people were asked, it was said that this is how and where the earth is contacted, and how she is able to give to them, and they are able to give to her. And this is a gateway for earth consciousness, or Arobinagu, to enter a community, allowing them to master the things we now refer to as civilization. But awareness of Arobinagu has led me to understand that it's not the ancient civilizations that build the pyramids. Rather, the pyramid often builds the ancient civilization. Now, if this is beyond your scope of belief, that's your problem. Now, it's important to note that the Nsude community was not the only community with these pyramid structures. They were a common feature throughout Igbo land, but for many reasons that we can probably explore in a different video, the British commanded that they be destroyed. So, one by one, the pyramids of Igbo land were torn down as the church began to gain authority over the land. Attendants of these pyramids, or the individuals who would be the ones that would maintain, build, and use them for the general community, were among the first to be converted to Christianity. And upon conversion, many were encouraged to show their loyalty to the church by destroying the Arushi that was the pyramids of Igbo land. And it's this destructive impulse that is within monotheism, what we can refer to as the Abrahamic religions, is what has eventually led to Odinani Igbo, the knowledge of the indigenous people, being backed into a corner. Everywhere you go, be it in India, Afghanistan, the Middle East, and throughout Africa, there's this perpetual and ingrained habit of individuals of the Abrahamic faith to destroy whatever was there before them, if it is not one of the three Abrahamic religions. So as the Europeans destroyed the pyramids in Igbo land, they also commissioned book burnings in places like Kano, Mali, and so forth. Until this day, the number one threat to the artifacts and Arushi of the Igbo people are individuals trying to prove their loyalty to the church by setting them on fire and destroying them and so forth. So as this destruction happens, much of what I'm telling you today has been relegated into the shadows. In one of my videos, I told the story of a grand uncle and a grand aunt who healed my infant brother's broken leg. And for context, the doctors in the United States said that he'll never walk again. And they had tried everything. But by burying my brother's leg in the earth and doing other things that surrounded the healing, my brother was able to walk within a week. Now, the individual who did this was not a Dibia, but much of this knowledge that has been pushed into the shadows, healing a paralyzed child, was common knowledge because the source of this knowledge was at all times accessible to people who were willing to tap in and listen. After the destruction of a lot of the physical evidence, a lot of the knowledge then goes through this experience of being warped. Gwensu becomes the devil, Chineke becomes God who creates, and rather than creator and creation, and in turn becomes a bearded white man. Your individual chi is no longer individual, it's now Jesus. It's shared by every chi means Jesus to some people now. Chukwu becomes whichever one they need it to be. All aspects of the feminine creator, Ne Chukwu Komosu Eke, completely vanish, leaving these strange holes in the Igbo language where people have a hard time explaining what things mean because an entire half of our knowledge has been virtually erased. But even with all of this happening, I'm very optimistic about the future, and I have no fear whatsoever that this knowledge is going to disappear. Our ancestors did not piece this worldview together because it is what they believed or is a collection of their opinions. This is the language our ancestors use to describe living existence. What cannot be proved is dismissed and left alone. What is provable, verifiable, and true is lived by, forming omenala. Right? It's very difficult to go to a Dibia and hear what I'm saying and tell them that what they are saying is based on belief when the person is using that very thing to heal actual ailments in real time, to perform surgeries, to form medicines, to find medicines, and form technologies and societies. And whether or not we are in tuned to the facts, or we dismiss them, or we don't understand them, they will always exist. They will never go anywhere. This knowledge can be passed down from person to person through the process of ako, but it doesn't come from a person, and it doesn't come from a people. At all times, the earth is sending impulses of wisdom, known as aro, upwards, as providence is sending impulses of wisdom, known as use, downwards. And whenever we choose to open our Nkatabia, everything we believe was lost will land exactly where it was supposed to be.
Earlier I said that Agon is the spirit which guides Dibias, and it has two heads which face away from each other for a regular person. I also said during the initiation process, a Dibia will sit in isolation for several days, if not weeks, and will re-emerge when they are able to make the two faces of Agon face each other or speak to each other. When Okeagon, light consciousness from the father, and Neagon, also known as Arobinagu, nature consciousness from the mother, begin to converse, unlocking a concept known as Etu, or the mind of the creator. a universal consciousness that we all share, the way we all share oxygen and sunlight. In the Uli language, one of the ways this is symbolized by drawing two triangles converging, a symbol you will see in many Dibia's workspaces, which looks like what we now refer to as the Star of David. This is one of the many reasons that people have theorized that Igbos are Hebrews, but ironically, this isn't even a Hebrew or Jewish symbol. The star is used in mysticism to represent knowledge and power from below and knowledge and power from above, or two opposing types of knowledge converging at a single point. The earliest known use outside of Africa of this symbol was among Arab mystics and later Islamic mystics who use it to communicate the same idea. Chinese, Hindu, and various Native American cultures use this symbol to represent something similar. Even in the Levant, or what we're now calling Israel, in the time of the Torah, the star was referred to as the Star of Remphan, and the Torah refers to it as something that Hebrews are not supposed to use, as it represents a foreign pagan god associated with the planet Saturn. It's seen as a Jewish symbol today because thousands of years later, in the 17th century, a group of Jewish intellectuals met in the Czech city of Prague in Eastern Europe and decided that this symbol would represent the Jewish people's emerging quest for a homeland in the movement known as Zionism. Now, some uses of the hexagram are rooted in Odinani Igbo, but others are rooted in various Igbo people trying to assert that they are Jewish or that Igbo people are Jewish. And this is something that started in the 1990s. Now, when you see it in this context, it's not referring to Arobinagu. It's referring to the state of Israel. Today, the use of it has primarily become a thing of confusion and propaganda from individuals who don't really know Igbo or Jewish history, but feel entitled to merge the two. If you want me to make a video on this whole topic, the Igbo Jewish theory, go ahead and comment below.
All right, let's continue this discussion on patreon.com/TheMedicineShell. And as always, this is Derek with The Medicine Shell. Thank you.